Hello and welcome back to Mirror's Signal podcast, your weekly podcast sponsored by Knowledgeably Instructor Training, award-winning CPD providers. Make sure you stay tuned to the episode for your discount code from them. Now, today's episode is episode 100. So I would like to say a massive thank you to everyone that has followed the show, watched an episode, signed up to the membership. Really appreciate everyone that has been part of the show so far. And the guest today is a regular on the show, Dr. Julia Malkin, MBE. And today's episode is again about neurodiversity, but this episode is about communication and how we can communicate with different pupils and how they might understand that communication as well. So some good insights and tips that we can use in our lessons. And the main underlying bit really is understanding our pupil. And at that point, it doesn't matter too much whether they're neurodiverse or neurotypical. When we work with the person, we can help them learn to drive. So as always, great episode from Julia, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Julia, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm okay, not too bad. I'm still here. How are you? All right.
I'm great, and thank you very much for joining me this evening. We chat regularly, but this one is another podcast episode for my followers, and I'm very much looking forward to it. We've done a lot of content together, some for Talking Send, some for my show. And I was struggling for something that we haven't covered because there's a lot out there. And where I would like to start this evening with you, Julia, if we can, is communication skills. Because it's something I can struggle with at times. My autistic learners, I'm too vague. My ADHD learners, I end up trapped in a conversation. And it's a struggle at times to get back on point. How can we be aware of that, understanding communication differences as a driving instructor?
Well, the best thing to do is understanding people's communication style. Sometimes they won't tell you what that is. So you got to think of the way they try to explain things. Are they the kind of person who likes to go into full detail in an explanation? All you got to do is park your car and you say to them, how do you actually view the road? And they might look at you totally gone out. In other words, that means you're too vague to put the detail of it. If they go babbling about every single thing they're seeing and how many cars are behind them and how many they're in front of and what the lights are all changing to and everything else, then that means their scope is too wide. And you know that you need to think, oh, when I talk to them, it's got to be about one thing at a time because they can see the whole lot coming in. A lot of it is the way they see it. Listen to the type of words and the type of language that they'd use. And also listen to any time delays. If you ask them a question, is there a delay on the response? Because if the more vague the question or the harder the question, the longer the time delay is going to be. But we're trying to think that question through. It's like, you know when you're on the computer and you're like trying to put something in and there's a bad signal and all you get is a circle in the middle that's doing this. That's what our brains are doing. And we look at the question, it's not quite fitting into one of our answers, as it were, if you treat our brain as if it was a machine. So it's kind of ticking over like that, trying to find the right answer. And sometimes it can tick over like that for quite a long time. And you're thinking, right, if they do that, then we want to speak in a different way to them. Because sometimes I have trouble when people speak to me. And I don't understand a word they're saying. I'm thinking, oh, Do you mean 1, 2, 3? Do you need to? Do you mean this? Do you mean that? And sometimes I have a list of about 5, and I'm thinking, actually, making a list here, people should be able to speak to, but they don't. They just don't. They just give me a rather vague statement, and I don't know how to respond to it because of the way in which it comes in. A lot of it's interpretation, some of it's decoding. With autism, it could be imagination problems and interaction also causing the trouble. ADHDs, it could be too much info coming in at once and looking for the answer. I'll tell you, it's immense, the kind of questions, problems that you find when you ask somebody a question. It's very, very important to work on the pupil's level. So you ask them what they see on the road. If they just look back at you, that means you've got to be more specific. Point out a certain vehicle, what it does, etc. And ask them also how far up the road they can see and what they see at the far end of the road, where they can see away. See how far the peripheral vision is. Ask them also what they consider on the road to be a hazard. Because what they consider on the road to be a hazard is different to what you think it could be. Guy on the roof could be a hazard because he could fall off. See? But you are thinking of different types of hazard, aren't you? Every instructor is. You see the difference, how it works with us? Because we've been often in hazardous situations. And a lot of us, especially level 1 autistics and some ADHD people, have got PTSD on top of those problems, which means the brain is always on a hyper alert. So when they look for hazards, they look above and beyond what you would look for hazards. They look for something more personal, more direct. That's what they're looking for. Okay?
So I'd like to start then with the delay from the question to the answer. What is the best thing for us to do in that situation? I've posed my question, pupils processing it. Do I wait? Do I reword it? What's best for me to do?
You give them a few seconds, don't respond immediately. And then you ask, would you like me to say it in a different way? Yeah. You don't ask them, do you understand it? Because some people will just say yes, even if they don't. Now, that is very common with autism. That's part of the masking. They disguise themselves. They think if I say no, that instructor's going to think I'm thick as a brick. So I can't say no and I daren't say no. Now, this is copacetism from school and from life. Now, you don't want them to suddenly put the mask up and start coping mechanisms coming on, otherwise you can't see what the real pupil is underneath. So you've got to find out, by having the real pupil in the real vehicle, what's going on in that brain without them putting a front on. Now, these people on the spectrum can be very, very clever. Some of these fronts they put on are so subtle you can't see through it. So you got to know 100% what you're dealing with here. You got to keep the questions open. You never ask them, do you understand? But you can ask them small questions, which will prove to you whether they can. So you're always giving those questions on small as possible, step by step. Break a big question down into smaller ones. And fill those imagination gaps in as well. You don't ask them just, what do you see over there on your left? There's about 20 things on the left. So you need to break it down into what kind of thing. What's happening with the pedestrian aisle there? What about the cyclist on the way? So bring some more detail into it. Sometimes you've got to be even more detailed than that. It depends on the pupil. A whole lot depends on your pupil. But keep your questions open. You don't shut your questions up, and you don't ask what they understand because you put a big mask on. And they'll always say, yeah, even though they can't. Yeah. On the other side, there are other brains that have so much difficulty trying to fathom out a question that if you say something that is not detailed enough, and then you ask them questions, you might say, what about this? What about that? So you're keeping your questions open, but they'll still say, I don't know, in a flat negative. And they might say that immediately, and you know they've not had time to think, but they'll still say, I don't know. And they'll say it flat like that, I don't know. And that means they do know, but it takes too much strain and pain from the brain to be able to find that answer, explain it back to you. There might be a part of them that thinks, what's the point of it? Explain it over and over again. He knows I understand this. Why is he asking me again for it? Or there can be frustration building up in there. In a lot of us, there is. Now, I know because I'm married. I've got a husband who repeats things over and over again, and it drives me absolutely mental. There's been rows over it. And he says the same thing. I says, you've already asked me that. Look, I've already told you the response to this. Look, you've already said this before. There's no need to say it again. Was I born last week? Was I born yesterday? Not think it's a big, don't say that again. And I keep, with us, we can get very, very, very stressed if someone says the same thing over again, especially if they've said it before and we've said the answer before, and you're saying it again to us. I'm thinking, you should know that. You've already said that to you. So sometimes we can get stressed with this. So see if you can vary that question. See if you can think of a different answer other than the one we said last week. You think of something else. Because sometimes some of us get so sick of other people asking us the same question. Oh, you've asked me that again. You asked me that before. Do you think I haven't learned it yet? Was I born yesterday? And you can feel kind of, it's horrible. It's a kind of aggression almost building up inside you and thinking, I just want to thump this person in the face to keep him shut up now. I just want him to shut it and keep quiet. Doesn't he know what I know? Why does he keep asking me this? Honestly, it's very, very deep. You're dealing with something that's very deep emotional, because it brings us back to school. It brings us back to school bullies. It brings us back to teachers who don't understand us. Repeat, and all the same questions in the face. And that's where we get tired out when we get home from school or from college or uni or work or something. You get people asking questions in the face all the time, and if it's the same old thing over and over again, it could absolutely make us want to blow right through that roof. And you don't want that in your car. You don't want that in your car, okay? So rather than go through the same crazy rigmarole, we can say, I don't know. Right?
I get that. There's something you said, and I do it, and I know I do, and that is, do you understand? Do you understand the question? Do you understand the picture that I've just drawn?
Say, because I can quote these answers back. Number one, do you mean this? Number two, do you mean that? Yeah. Because I don't know what you mean because of social imagination gaps. A neurotypical person will use their imagination to figure out what answer you want. Now, because most of us can't do that, we just have a flat question put in your face. Do you understand? And I'm thinking, now I've got to go through 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And I'm just thinking, this is just a load of stress. We don't want this. So some neurotypicals, they try the best to teach us, but they keep falling into the same old traps. And that's one of those big traps that people fall into. Ask yourself again, do you understand this? Do you understand what? Is it 1, this, 2, this, 3, that? I'm thinking, and it's so frustrating because the frustration brings the energy up, So instead of using that energy to drive your car and to learn, it's being burnt up being frustrated. So we get worn out. We can't concentrate and we're so flat at the end of that run if we start thinking things like that before we lesson or during your lesson, we won't have any energy left. And that's what sometimes bothers some of us when we're doing reflective feedback at the end of the run. Some people are so frightened of driving lessons because of the reflective feedback. It's not because of the driving. It's not because of the driving. And I get people come to me and say, oh, my driving instructor's going to ask me this and ask me that. I'm going to faintest idea of what to say. That's why I don't like driving, because I get these questions put on the spot and I've got a faintest idea. And all I do is end up saying, I don't know. And then it's, I'm thinking, oh dear, all right, let's see if we can take the lesson to pieces and see if we can find out things you can say to your driving instructor. It is harder for us to speak to an instructor about those things than it is for us to drive the vehicle. Most instructors don't know that. It takes more energy and effort for communication than for driving. And so when we've had a driving lesson, when we parked up, people should be happy. I've finished my driving lesson, I was able to drive today, I was able to achieve this and this today. But we think, oh no, my driving instructor's going to ask me other questions and what the word he's talking about. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go through this. So you got to make those questions at the end appealing for us to answer, rather than put us on the spot and think about that past lesson and reflect on this, because there's just a lot of trouble. And the trouble we get varies from one pupil to another. Some have trouble with the actual recall. They've got to call back an hour's lesson and try to find holes in it. Sometimes they can't do that. Others have got a bad part of the lesson playing on our brain that won't switch off. So all we can find is that bit. Others have trouble with the vague part of a question. You say, how do you feel about 1, 2, 3? How do I feel? I feel tired. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about so-and-so? I'm tired, so it's number 1. So all are going to get to number 1. How do you feel confidence-wise about 1, 2, 3, 4? My confidence is 0 because I've just had a driving lesson and you're putting me on the spot, so it's a 1. That's what you're going to get, right? So you're not getting accurate answers. You won't be getting any accuracy. And then you'll look back and think, is my pupil making any progress? Technically they are, and driving-wise they are. But the hardest part of that lesson for a lot of them is going to be that reflective feedback. They're going to have trouble. Because it's interaction. Because it's communication on a social level. That's what it is. There's imagination involved in those questions and the thinking. Have I got to go back in the past again? Back to what I did wrong? And try to figure out why it is that I did make that mistake when I don't even know myself. And my driving instructor should be telling me. And I'm thinking, I've got to tell him what it is. And I'm thinking my head is going to explode. And that is how they're feeling. And they're thinking, I just want to get out of the car, get out of the door, just shut it to, go indoors and get a drink before I pass out. Now, they honestly feel, some of them do feel as really, really frustrated as that. On a Facebook group, one of the Facebook groups for autism, there was I saw that a couple of years ago, there's a tremendous, lovely autism-related one of these big memes that they've got, and it says, there's got a picture, I think it was of Bart Simpson, and they have the letter writing on it, and it says, look at me, I'm a neurotypical. I just give hints instead of just telling people. And that summarizes them to the core when they're trying to hint things out of us. And it's all hint, hint, hint to us. They're thinking, why don't you just tell the story? For some reason, they don't want to. They've got to hint us instead. And we're trying to kind of see through the hints. It's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle without a picture to run on. Or giving us a jigsaw puzzle supposed to be 100 and you're giving us 50 pieces for it. That's what it feels like. The everyday person uses imagination to fill the gaps in. We can't do that. Now you imagine yourself with a jigsaw puzzle supposed to be 100 bits and you've only got 50. And the everyday person uses imagination to find out where the other bits will go. And we can't do it. And that's what it feels like when you're put on that spot at the end of the road. I have people sobbing online because of that. I'm fine with the driving and I'm fine in the car and I finally can learn this so, but my driving instructor at the end of the phone is going to ask me some questions. It puts me on the spot and I don't know what to say. I say, right, don't worry, please don't worry about it. Let's go through what's going on. And next time you're in that lesson, what I want you to do is take notes of what the instructor asks you, okay? So we know the exact questions, so you can figure the answers out for you, and what he's trying to ask. And I have to interpret them and put them in a language that people understand. And then we figure out the kind of answers without dragging that pupil back in the past and bringing bad memories out of them. Because with some of them, it's a repetition of what they used to go through at school. I put on the spot when I was in class and we were working in a group and I'm not sure how the group was oriented, what it was working like, and I had to ask questions what the group was doing. How the group was doing, and I was put on the spot, and I was put on the spot in front of the whole room, and I couldn't cope, and everybody else was laughing. And it brings those memories right back to us. There's a lot of us are split up into small groups at school to work on something. And then someone's nominated in the group to be able to go and speak to the class about what they were doing. 90% of the bullies that we're working with will put us on the spot and select us as that person. And watch us make a fool of ourselves on purpose, and they love it. And we're the ones on that spot. Imagine the recall with that. No wonder we've got PTSD. I've got PTSD. A lot of us are PTSD, and we're thinking we want the ground to swallow us up, which means we want the floor of that car to open up so we can just like disappear through it. It can be quite as bad as that. So the ADI, I'm just thinking, yeah, I'm asking a few simple questions on what went well and what didn't go so well. And what do you feel? I'm thinking, whoa, you've overloaded the brain. I mean, I can laugh about it now, but we've had brains overloaded before. It's not quite so laughable. I've seen people torn to shreds with people's questions like this. And, it's just the way in which we've interpreted as being, because we can't use imagination to find the answer. We are like computers. Remember, computers have got files. We go back into files that we've made from the past. Let's have a look at something that's happened in the past similar to this and see if I can find an answer for it. Now, our brain automatically does that. So it ends up turfing some horrible memories from school and college and other nasty things that happened to us. What happened when I was put on the spot? How did I cope? What did I say? Try to find some points that you can put, We learn by copying. And we try and copy some of the old answers from the past and place them into the present. So often we do that. Have you ever been in a situation when you've come back to school after school holidays, and you know you couldn't afford a holiday, and everybody else will be talking about the holidays, and then the teacher in the class says, stand up 1by1 and talk about your holiday. So the first couple of the kids stand up and tell us where they've been. Now, what are the poor kids going to do? They're going to do exactly what us on the spectrum is going to do. Memorize what the other kids were saying. And when it's their turn, stand up and talk about that with as much enthusiasm and drive as those people do. And they can't tell the difference. Now, what if they try and do that in your car? What if they're trying to invent something? Social imagination we don't have much of. Creative imagination we do have. Especially if we've got dyslexia on top. Dyslexia is creative. That's a massive creative brain. We can find solutions to problems because we always believe in a solution. Wherever there's a problem, we look at the problem and can find an answer. And because autistic people are good designers, and also because dyslexic people are good problem solvers, if you get that kind of brain with those two together, they can fix anything. They don't know they can, some of them, but they can. The only trouble is delving into the past to find the solution. The instructor asks them a question, what went well? And they think, I can't think of anything that went well in that lesson. because those are low self-esteem on high level 1, and these are very common, can't go into the past to have a look for it, can't think of anything that went right, so they go into the past and think, right, there's got to be something I can say that I can copy from the past that went well. So they'll end up going into past driving lessons. Some of them might. Some of them might go into private practice and pull something out from there. They're trying to think of something to say quick because they're put on that spot. So what I do with people, I say, right, these are the questions your driving instructor is going to ask you at the end of your lesson. So what you're thinking is, have a look at the past lesson you've just been through. Are there any things that have improved in your driving over this lesson that you've just had? Put them down in a note between that week and this coming week. And then look at those things you've been working on to improve. Were there any faults made in that lesson? Let's see if we can get those right. And so what they're doing is setting goals to answer the questions when they come on. So they've got something to say. So they're not saying, I don't know. They're not having to go back in the past and relive all that stuff. They're getting homework ready. Some people like homework. They're thinking, right, I've got to get ready. I know where my driving lesson is. I know what instructor's going to ask me. I know about the questions. I know what he's going to say. I just need a decent answer. Because some of them have to go back in the past and relive the past and it hurts. Some have PTSD and want the floor to swallow them up. Some will just say a flat, I don't know. Some will put a mask on and start copying. These are the kind of reactions you're going to get. So I have to train the use of the brain with a bit of homework. By looking into the past lesson and holding it as the past lesson. We don't go any further than that. We don't go diving into the past and get all those nasty memories up. No, we just go through that one lesson and see how many notes you can take. And I even go so far as to say, if you're frightened of forgetting something that happened in your lesson, ask your instructor to pull you over and then you write some notes on the spot about it. Or if you can't write on the spot about it, you can talk into your phone or get your instructor to write some notes about it or type it into your iPad. So you've got some things that you're putting down that are good. So when those questions come on at the end of your run, have you got something good that's happened in your lesson? Yes, I have. I actually found something that I could remember that was good. And I've got a note about it to prove to myself that it happened. It's not my imagination. I didn't invent it. It really did happen. I've had people so upset sometimes. I say, right, when you're driven to a certain place, you get out of the car and you ask the driving instructor to get out of the car and you take your mobile phone with you. And you're taking notes about where you physically are at that time and take a picture of your car. Because that puts a date and a time on that photo. You could prove 100% that you drove to that spot. Is that a good thing? Yes, it is. I've had them making it into screen, for the phone wallpaper stuff and making messages out of it and send it to the family and all sorts to say, hey, I did this. That's me. I drove my car all the way to this point by myself. And I can prove 100% they did it because it's got a time on the photo that proves it did. So they don't need to go to the past anymore. They've got good things in the present. They don't go around hunting in the past trying to find something good to say when the instructor says, have I done well? They find something they can say. Look at this. This is me. This is my car. I might should drive all the way to this point. So things like that is sometimes they need reflection. They should done on the spot and say, right, do you want to save this for later? We'll do the questions at the end. Oh, yes, please. You can ask them that. We've got something good here. Would you like to know what it is? Oh, yes, please, we'll say. I say, right, how would you like me to get you to take it down? Do you like to take a photo of the car? Would you like to type it into your iPad? Or do you want a few notes I can make on it or draw a diagram out? How would you like it? And so they got some stuff. They're loading the brain up with some good stuff. So if that driving instructor at the end of the run can say to you, what have you done? Well, right, let's see what you've done. All right, there's all this lot. And they can't believe it sometimes. They're not going back in the past hunting. They're not having taken files in the brain. They're not getting frustrated because there aren't anything. Sometimes I forget the whole hour and can't think of a thing. Others have only got one bad thing playing in the brain all the time. Others, they say a flat I don't know, because it's too much work trying to get back into the past and dig it all up. But now they've got some stuff. And that's how it should be. And I do that sometimes if they want something to improve on as well. Ooh, there's that little fault. Let's see what we can do about it. What happened? So let's analyse this, see what happened, and see if we get to the bottom of it. Because the natural analyzers, especially if they've got dyslexia on the top, there's a problem. Let's see if they can find a solution. There's some crazy solutions come out, I tell you. But let them find them. They're incredible. They can find a solution to a problem. They've got dyslexia on the top and thinking, right, let's see if we can get this brain organised. How do you see this? How does your brain see this problem? And they can say, how do we get the solution? Let's see if we can find a solution together. So often it's a we and a together. When I put it into the question, how can we find a solution together? So they're not, oh my God, it's me on my own. I went to do everything by myself and I found a problem. I've got to find a solution to myself. And that's my driving instructor saying to me at the end of the run, what did you do not so well? And I can't think of a thing. And that puts me on the spot and my face is going to go purple and I'm going to want that car's floor to open up. And my frustration is coming up. And I just want to blow my top somewhere and I can't blow it. No, it's not like that. You see, what are we going to do to improve this together? And you say, well, okay, so let's have a few ideas for improving. Okay. What I want you to do is take a few notes on it. How would you like it? And they're taking a few notes on it, and I'm driving a few bits down and things like that, and put a bit of a diagram, things like this. Okay, let's try it this way. So I'm going to see if we can try it this way. Would you like to try it this way? Or would you like to try it that way? What about this? So I only give them two alternatives. If you give them 10, they won't be able to follow you. But if they're two, they can usually pick one of two. And then I can say to them, let's have a go. It doesn't matter if it goes wrong again. Don't worry. We're going to get it right. We're going to work on it together because we're both doing this. You're not on your own. Not on your own. And sometimes you get them to pick not on your own. And they'll say, not on my own. They'll say, right. Some of us on the spectrum don't know what teamwork is. We used to fend in for ourselves. We used to work by ourselves on our own. We don't know what it's like to work with another person. We remember those days of those school groups when we're working together in a small group of people in the class and the bullies are laughing at us because we can't do it and they nominate us to go to the front, tell what the class, what the group's been doing and make an exhibition of themselves so they can have a really good gig. That is our group experience. We've got to learn to work as a team. So teaming up with the driving instructor is fantastic for them. We're going to work on this together. How are we going to work on this? So they're learning decent team building skills. They're learning that there's no such thing as a problem that can't be solved. They're learning how to solve the creative problems by themselves with a bit of help from them. They're learning how to grow as people. Those are memories that you're also building up, which means in the past, they'll think of all those nasty experiences. They won't go into the past so deep, will they? They go back to that past lesson and think of you and think of good teamwork. I've got a good memory now. When something happens, I don't have to go back in the past looking for a solution. I can look at last week's driving lesson and see how I and my driving instructor was working as a team to fix this problem. And that's communication. So we're not disguising ourselves. We're not saying, I don't know. We're not got PTSD. We're not getting horrible frustration. Not thinking, oh my God, I'm put on the spot again and I've got nothing to say. Because everything has all been taken during those runs. And sometimes those pupils have got a file as big as mine. And they come in here with all little bits and bobs. And some of them are so creative, they love it. And I had one pupil and I says to him, I says, oh, there's lots of bad driving. He says, I get frightened of the bad drivers. I says, right. Because they do. The whole world's a terrifying place to many on the spectrum. And I say to them, right, when are you in the car between lessons? Does your mum or dad take you out? Do you go on the bus? And he says, I've got a taxi that takes me to my special school. I says, right. When you're in your taxi, what I want you to do is notice how many bad drivers you can see on the route to your special school. See how many you can spot. Can you remember the types of mistakes they make? So that's the first thing we do, is starting off like that. And The following week, he comes to his lesson with a phone full of photographs. There's this one parked in this place. Look at this. I said, that's a bad driver. Well, right on the end, I couldn't see out the junction. Oh, it says, and then we can analyze it and say, what did your taxi driver do about this? What speed would he needed to have used? How would he need to go around this corner when there's somebody parked right on that edge there? So then he's learning from seeing past bad drivers. So he's not being frightened of them. He's using them as a learning experience because he's taking notes on the way up. I think homework is so important for these people because it builds their interest so much. They've just used homework to take a fear off somebody. He's not so afraid of the bad drivers anymore because he's using them to learn from. And that's communication. He now trusts you as a fellow team member, the members of the team, you see. He's not afraid to show me his phone full of photographs. He doesn't come and say, I say to him, have you seen any bad drivers? He says, I don't know. No, there's nothing of that. So it opens up as well. It opens communication up. It does a massive lot of things. Homework. I'm always using homework for people. It's just the way it is. I always use it. What do you think about that? I know it's quite a lot.
It is a lot. Homework is something I don't do much of, but I do try and do some. An example would be a student recently had an issue on a driving test on a multi-lane roundabout. Now he's going to go away for a while, and he's not going to be back with me for a few weeks. So one of my suggestions was, because he can't private practice, I suggested he heads down to the roundabout when he gets opportunities, just to watch the rest of the traffic and look for the mistakes, look for what people are doing, so we can understand the layout and what's going on without driving through. And there have been other instances where I've tried it to help with the theory support as well. So setting homework. I got an idea of yourself, actually. One of my learners was struggling with road signs. So I said, well, while you're out walking, see how many you can see and see if you know what it means. And if you don't know what it means, take a picture and find out when you get home. And that helped him. And what I'd like to ask you about now, really, would be we've spoke about those that are maybe not as confident asking questions or give us I don't know. But the other side of this is we sometimes find ourselves with pupils that like to keep talking and keep talking. How can we manage that in the car without coming across as rude?
Right, there's two lots of people with this main problem in the neurodiversity line. One's the ADHDs with the impulse and hyperactivity, and they can be quite chatterboxy. The other type is the person on the autism spectrum who has a special interest, sees something that reminds you of special interest, and he's off. And so if he sees a bus, I had one that saw a bus and he goes like engine and model numbers of this, that, and the other, and the fuel types, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was just reciting it like a computer. Now, the ADHD people have got to keep the concentration to the road. I find the commentary helps them a great deal with that. Well, what depends on what's actually started off the chatterbox. And as soon as you see a chatterbox start, if it carries on more than a minute, you think, oh, it's setting in now, let's pull the car up. And then you ask, what actually started it? What did you see first? And what did you think about first? Okay? Because that's what actually started this sequence off. It's very important to know what it is and see if we can find the core to the problem. And then you're thinking, right, what is your brain thinking about when you see this? That's your next step. You found out what it is first that they've seen. And the next thing they find out is what happens in the brain when they see this particular thing. They look at it. It makes a response, doesn't it? Because it makes the person start talking. Now, what is it that causes that when they see this? So there's obviously a thought process. And that thought process isn't the driving process. They're not thinking about MSBSL when they're looking at it. They're thinking about something else, and off they go. Yeah? It's an impulse reaction. Let's see if we can break that impulse reaction down. And when you see something similar, you keep an eye on that pupil. See what's happening with the brain and what makes the brain react that way. Are they thinking about something in the past? Is it an interest that they've got? Is it something distracting or something clashing with the surroundings that starts it? Because sometimes a distraction can start ADHD people off, because that's what the brains are wired up to do. That's why they can spot things so quickly, and changes in the environment they'll know. So find out what that problem is. But it's an impulse reaction. Remember with ADHDs, if it's an impulse response, by the time they've followed that impulse, they'll come back to the task, and they might forget entirely where they are in the task. That's the thing. They've got to follow that impulse. They don't stay on the task. So as soon as if they start chatting and you don't know what it is, then you pull the card and then you go, right. Do you remember what the first thing was that you saw before you started talking? What was that? How do you feel when you saw this? What was happening? What did your brain say to you? What was happening in your brain? What was your brain thinking? What was your brain saying? I treat the brain as a separate entity. It's not the person. They aren't a brain. They have a brain. Therefore, they can, it's very similar like a pair of shoes. They can take it on and off. That means they can train this brain. They can train it. They can train this brain. I think, right, I can train my brain to be able to react in a different way. Is it a distraction that's causing it? How are we going to work together to sort this distraction out? So, would it work if you saw this distraction and you wanted to talk about it? Would it be better to think about mirror check? Takes your eyes off the road and stops the impulse from setting. Yeah, that's one way we can fix it. Works with about, I would say, half to about 56% of people. Oh, there's a distraction. We don't mention the distraction. So when you see them being distracted again, you don't think, oh, coming down the road, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got to, because that means the brain's waiting for that distraction. They're going to go for it. If they see, if you know there's a distraction in there, you don't mention the distraction and say, okay, we're doing a mirror check because, and then mention a different part of the road. And then the brain associates seeing that distraction with needing a mirror check. So the next time they see one, they'll do it again. Next time they see one, they'll do it again. You program the brain to settle. It's what they call operant conditioning. With operant conditioning, you don't even need to see that a light comes on if you flick the switch. You know by turning the switch on, it turns a light on. So therefore, by seeing a distraction like that, they'll know automatically. They don't even need to see that there's a distraction. It'll think, oh, mirror check. So that's an action and a reaction in the brain. So you can train them with that. There's a few ways you can train it, but find out what's the cause of it. Now, with autism, it's a bit difficult because it's an auto response, but it's not run on instinct. It is run on sheer personal passion mode. The brain changes gear almost. So as soon as they see this particular thing that they're interested in, it is off, and it is very hard work trying to press a switch that says, turn this off, please. So they will interrupt on there. Usually want an interrupt, and I say, right, what I want you to do, you're thinking about that big bus, aren't you? Because you talk about it, and sometimes you can't interrupt the sentences, it's that bad. So sometimes you can say, wait. It's usually an escalation, you know, it starts to talk the voice, wait. So it kind of runs like that. And they're taught that before the lessons even start, that there's 3 words I'm going to say. You know, there's a kind of 3 terms, levels, you know. There's the way in which you talk to them normally, there's the wait, and then there's a stop, which is said at full throttle, so they know it's the loudest word I'm going to say. That means I won't shout at them, okay? Because they know the loudest word I'm going to say is stop. And that programs the brain. Brain says, my driving instructor's not going to shout at me, but my driving instructor has told me the loudest word I'm ever going to say, okay? So there's normal tuition level, and there's a wait, and then there's a stop that's at full throttle. So that programs the brain on center. But if they taught that from day one, and then they start talking about this person, then they'll say to them, wait, they'll think, oh, brain goes into response mode. That's a brain program. That program will cut. And they're thinking, right, so what am I waiting for? And I think, right, can you pull up on the left for me, please? Nothing that you done that's wrong. I just want to pull up and talk about something. And then when they're pulled up properly, then we mention the bus. And then they'll learn to say, right, everything about that bus, what do you know that the bus that you saw? And then they associate talking about the subject with being pulled up. You put a weight program into that brain. You've said to the brain, wait. So next time they see one, it could automatically come up. They'll see another one again. And they might even say to you, can I pull up on the left, please, because I want to talk about my bus. Now, if they say something like that because the weight program's intercepted, then you can say to them, I'm going to give you 5 minutes at the end of this lesson. Those 5 minutes are when you can tell me all about that bus. Okay, 5 minutes at the end. Now, the warning you, they'll be counting that clock, waiting for that for those 5 minutes. And you've got to hang on to your word because they trust you, right? Don't break the trust. They've got to give them their 5 minutes at the end. And then they're pulled up happily talking about their bus. It's just how to program the brain. What do you think about that? Yeah?
Yeah, I can see that in my lesson. And I think that comes back to what you mentioned at the beginning is understanding our pupil and then knowing what to expect from that pupil. And it starts from that initial question, like you've mentioned, look at the road, tell me what you can see. And that's our way of seeing into their brain.
That's the thing. You've got to look for behavior patterns. Now, you guys are neurotypical. You'll be able to read things like body language. Look at how the eyes are seeing it. What are the reactions in the body? Or the body nicely reacts and all of a sudden see that distraction. They get closed and they get tight. Think of things like this as the voice change tone. In other words, I'm driving down the road and, oh, there's so-and-so. Is there a kind of a shock mode when they see it? So you're looking for all these kind of things that will tell you what that brain is thinking. Does it perceive the distraction as being dangerous? Does it perceive this distraction as something from the past? Does it bring memories up? You're going to go into that brain and you're going to say, what is your brain thinking about right now? Sometimes it can go into the past and tell you stories. You'd be amazed. Yeah.
We've experienced that with some of the content that we filmed for Talking Send when you was talking about that on the in-car that we was doing, when you was pointing out those connections, which really surprised me with how quickly those links can be made and then how much of a distraction it can become. But what I would like to ask you about now is, are there any other communication challenges that we might come across with, say, dyslexia? Can that be an auditory issue for those
Yes, it
learners
can,
as
because
well?
I've got it. There is an audio dyslexia processing. Yes, it's auditory processing disorder, which is a bit separate, but the two are very closely linked, and I've got it myself. And I must admit that there are a couple of driving instructors I've taught them online and they speak too quickly and I'm saying slow down because they're just so used to being in a moving vehicle and having to say things quickly and they're having to take the words apart and make the words clearer and more spaced out so we can understand. Sometimes, I mean, it's the same thing, vagueness causes a problem. Some of us can't answer questions if it's live on road through audio. Some need to be put in situations, say, right, I've got something to talk about. Would you like me to pull you up? You know, because it's quite a long sentence. Or because sometimes they will have trouble. I mean, my husband's ADHD. He can't talk about something when he's trying to do a junction. He's just, I've got to ease off the gas because all the info is pouring in at 90 mile an hour to him. And it's things like that. You'll find that it's the most complex situations which they'll need the help the most that are the situations you can't speak at because the information is just coming in full throttle and they won't be able to hear a word you're saying. Now, this often happens with babies with autism. That's the first time they usually get this kind of problem. Maybe it's not dyslexia. Maybe they haven't got auditory processing disorder. But as babies, it can happen when they're doing something and you clap your hands behind the baby. They don't respond to you. And the thinking is this baby deaf? Is this baby got ear trouble? And it could be autism. That sound is just blended in with all the other sounds and they can't distinguish it. So sometimes with audio, it can be that kind of processing problem as well. There's a comprehension tool, but there's a distinguishing one as well. If your voice blends into everything else that we see here and experience, then it can't even be perceived as different. It just won't register. I guarantee 100% that if I was in a pub full of people and there was a crowd watching a football on a separate screen in one corner, and there's guys talking on the next table, that if somebody on my table talked to me, I wouldn't be able to hear them because the voice would just blend in with everything else.
I had an incident, and it's making sense now, on one of my lessons. We're in a much better place now. It was one of her earlier lessons, one of my learners with autism, and she'd made a mistake and she'd not brought the clutch up, but had put her foot down on the accelerator.
Ooh,
and the
right.
engine was revving away. And
Yes,
while the engine was screaming, she was shouting, "What do I do? What do I do?"
Yes,
And I
talk
said,
under the sound. Talk underneath. Yes.
I was trying. I said, "Take your foot off the accelerator. Take your foot
No,
off
it
the
just blends in with the
accelerator."
sound, mate. Won't be
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a discussion after that. And I know me and you have spoke about this. I don't know whether it was on record or whether it was on something else. I don't know. But we had the chat at that point once it had settled down, obviously. And there are times where she would rather I raise my tone and almost shout and kind of snap her out of it. And I tried to be clear with her. I'm like, this isn't me shouting at you. It's me just shouting for the situation. And then we carry on. And she was absolutely fine with that. And we're making some good progress now. But what you've said there will make sense because the engine was revving away. I can't really be louder than the engine because it was going
Well,
some.
most of them go underneath. They teach people to go underneath, especially when there's a panic attack going on and people are verbal over. It's okay. It can calm down, relax. And they'll hear the small notes underneath. Ooh, what's that? That's all right. Yeah, but so it depends on the person. Some will want the wait signal that I told you about earlier. Every person's got their own way. And if this particular pupil likes it well over the top of all that and can distinguish it, as long as they know that you're trying to communicate with them. Sometimes you might need to raise a hand. They'll see the hand. There's lots of different ways people do it. Yes.
It did seem like she needed an over the top. It's almost like maybe if she's had issues in the past, someone's just shouted, "Look, stop.
Yeah.
Let's think about this." And we got there. But yeah, I'd not even considered that it could be something to do with the autism, with the noise blending in. And I guess that then is linked to things like traffic noise, radio noise, road noise from the
many
tires.
autistic people like the aircon on because the road noise is too loud and they can't. It goes over the top. Many of us, with noise, we can the slightest little sound, we can put our hands over our ears. And there's also sensitivity, the sensory sensitivity, which drives the sound as well. Sometimes those of us spectrum are very, very sharp with hearing. We can hear the blues and twos, and you can't even see a thing and hear a thing, but it's not our imagination. We have heard it. Sometimes we're very, very sharp. And some of that could be caused by PTSD sharpening the senses up. Remember the PTSD people? Always eye on the alert. So that kind of thing, that can affect our hearing.
So it is very much about understanding the pupil you've got in front of you, because we might have certain things with ADHD, certain things with autism, certain things with dyslexia, certain things with PTSD, certain things with audio
You got to know
processing
your people.
disorder,
Find out about that brain. Think about the
and then
brain.
they all link.
What is your brain thinking about right now?
And I think that's
Ask
that's
them
where
that,
it can be such a challenge, because
because that
all
means
of
you're
these
looking into the
conditions
brain.
are
Yeah, look
linked.
into the brain. Look into that brain and ask them what it's thinking about.
And then at that point, it doesn't really matter what neurodiversity they've got. What matters is we're talking to that person how they need us to talk to them right now.
Well, that's the thing. It's right now, on the spot. We're very much present people in the present time. Most of us can't forecast the future. That's very important. Most of us can't forecast the future at all. At the same time, the past is painful. We don't want to go back there. We don't want to go back to the places where we bullied and have to relive all these experiences over again. So the present is where we are. The future is a big black hole we can't see into. Past is full of pain. Present is our time. So everything that's in the present is where we can learn and build memories up and build confidence up and build skills up. I mean, people think of something like mindfulness as being in the present or something. But the present to us is the here and now as it is, because the future's just black and the past is just ugly. And we're kind of between those two worlds. So the better the situation we can make the present to be, the better we'll become as people, not just drivers, but also human beings. The present is where the confidence is developed. The present is where the skills are developed, where we start growing. The past is just not a place for learning. We've been to school, but that's not a place for learning. That's a place we have to learn to survive in. That's a place for survival. We want to be able to get out at the end of the day with as little cuts and bruises as possible. So we've got to think about the present as being our learning place, because the past we can't learn in it, and the future we can't see. Some of us can't even forecast tomorrow's weather, let alone see where do you think yourself to be in a week's time, a month's time, a year's time. We can't see that. So that's what you're thinking. You're thinking of us in the present time and using everything you can see and feel in the present. That is why we're saying, what is your brain thinking about right now? Using the present situation and the feelings in the brain and how it's weighing and evaluating and perceiving things as being the foundation point for observing our behavior patterns and thinking in that point. That's what we do right now. What is your brain thinking about right now? Yes. And then we start taking everything to pieces from that point. What do you think of that? Yeah.
Yeah, some things that have highlighted areas that I can improve in my lessons. Some things are making a little more sense that have happened in previous lessons that I can look to help with in the future. But talking about the present and right now, I have some tell me questions, Julia. Do you mind if we go through some of those?
No, that's fine. No problem at all. A little bit late, but there you go. Right. Okay. So right from the top, what have we got? You tell me.
So before we get to the tell me questions, here is your discount code from our sponsors, Knowledgeably Instructor Training. The discount code is MSP10, and that will get you 10% off their client-centered learning part 3 and standards check in-person award-winning workshop. That is MSP10 for 10% off. So the first question: what job would you be doing if you wasn't an ADI?
Right. So I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yep.
What
I
are you talking
apologize.
about? What are you talking about when if I'd left school or because I've been an ADI 18 years, you're talking 18 years ago, or are you talking longer than that? Or you see what I mean? You see how
This
vague
is
that
a
question
real good
is?
example. Yeah.
You see what I mean? That's how vague that question is. You're giving me a timing point. Yeah, well, not discussing
So
this lot.
if 18 years ago you didn't qualify as an ADI,
Now you're putting things on. That's better. That's better. I think in our language. Keep going.
what job do you think you would have ended up doing?
I don't know. Now, one, are you talking about a job I wanted to do? Two, would it be not a job by default that I might have ended up doing just by default, maybe? Or would it be,
What would you have liked to do?
well, I wasn't given much choice being a person on the spectrum I expected much of. I left school with no qualifications. And I became an ADI before I went to uni. I'd have probably gone to university. I did go to university when I was an instructor. But I would have probably studied more. I don't know. So I'm trying to say there's no real place in society for most on the spectrum. If I had an ideal position, I know it's 100 miles out of my league, but maybe doing something, maybe in the autism line, like psychiatry or psychology, something like that. You know, helping people on the spectrum, because I always known it was different. I wasn't diagnosed when I became an ADI. I was became an ADI, I think, too late. Wasn't long diagnosed then. I was doing my training without a diagnosis. But I must admit that it'd have been good, you know, to do something really good as a person. But I'd have done some kind of consultancy, I think, something to do with spectrum people. I like fixing problems. The world's full of problems. I like to fix a load of problems. The world's full of problems. I'd have done something problem solving like. I'm not sure what, but it'd be something to do with problem solving. Because I can see a load of problems that we want to fix. Yeah. That's the autism dyslexia line as I've got. Yeah.
We can see that, and it's briefly discussed in the episode. But I like that
Which is
answer.
what
So
I'm doing
something,
now. It's what we do with Talking Sound. We fix people's problems.
yes,
That's what Talking Sound does. Yes. That's what all my training does. That's what all the workshops do. All the files have written. They fix problems. That's the whole point.
so you're currently doing that job in the ADI world.
Well, technically, yeah, it's got the power to expand. Everything else has. You know, it doesn't just stop at being an ADI. Just like being an autistic person doesn't suddenly stop us at the end of your driving lesson. You're an autistic person when you get out of the car as well as when you're in it. It's an all-encompassing thing. That's why it needs to go further. Yeah.
I like that. So the next question, what do you think is the most important skill for an ADI?
Whoa, there's about 15 different skills here, and I've got to get down to the big core that drives the others. And I'm just thinking, what drives these other skills here? I mean, you've got patience, you've got the ability to trust, you've got the ability to control, you've got the ability to understand, you've got the ability to teach, you've got the ability to coach, you've got about 10 things all together. But what drives the entire lot? The orientation's going on. To get that orientation right, you've got to be able to empathize. You've got to be able to view that pupil as an individual. You've got to view that pupil as an individual with a different learning style. I've been there and I've seen every learning style under the sun. You've got to view that pupil in a whole. It's sort of like is it the GDE matrix that's got at the top the whole of the person? I think that's the most important thing is to look at that scale and see that one at the top that says this is the person as a whole. I mean, I don't view the driving license span as something that just ends up with a driving license and then goes, no, you're dealing with something that's much more than that. Because I've seen it. I've seen the way that people on the spectrum want to learn to drive, and it's not just a case of, hey, you want to get a driving license and get in the car and take your mates out to the sports hall or something, or a day out of holidays, or family, or the kids. No, it's not like that. The neurodiverse person, 99.99, most of them won't be able to tell you, but this is how the brains will tell you. They will want that full driver's license, one, as proof that they have a role in the neurotypical world. Two, that they'll be able to prove evidence that they can do what neurotypical people do. They can sit in a neurotypically built car on roads the neurotypical people built using the highway code that they design and the traffic lights that they put up, and have them alongside us in their own cars. And to be able to see that is seeing the whole person, which is putting them at the top of that GDE scale. You've got to know 100% what that person wants to achieve and to empathize with that person and see it from their viewpoint. You've got to be able to be inside that person's head. I think that's big number one, is to get inside somebody's brain and to be able to say, right, they can see it. Because if you get into that person's brain, then everything else follows on. You think, oh, this person wants this way, so they're going more patient. This person takes longer to build trust up, so I've got to build confidence on. This person's going to need a bit more help in a social situation, so they'll have more difficulty handling all the traffic. You've got to think of the person inside their head. How does that person see the road? How does that person see themselves fitting in with all these other drivers? The road's a connective web. Everything is connected to everything else. You react on something, one behind us. You wait at the giveaway lines, one behind you does. And it's not everything else all connected to everything else. And sometimes us on the spectrum have trouble seeing these connections, and you've got to be able to wake us up to it. We can't see the world as being connected. We have a lot of trouble trying to see that. We see us standing in the middle of all this mess. So that is what you're like if you get inside our head. So one of the biggest skills a driving instructor needs is to get inside someone's head. How much trust does that pupil need? They need 100% trust. They need to learn how to work as a team. All these skills that the instructor needs to do. So this is with driving, right? Is to get inside someone's head and to view the world as they do. It's more than empathy. It's like stepping inside a person. You step inside that person and you see it as they do. And the more they're able to do that, the better they're going to be. I honestly think that's a big core of it, is to view at the top of the GDE as a whole person. You start there at the top down. I think it's important that they start at the top. What do you think? Yeah?
Love it. The most in-depth answer I've had yet on that one, but it's
I forgot to go gold medal for that or something.
So the next question, can you tell me the biggest lesson you have learned as an ADI?
It's the same kind of thing. It's being able to step into other people. I think it's very similar, because remember, it's the reverse for me. As a neurodiverse person, I've got to learn to step into the heads of neurotypical people. I've got to learn to see the world as they do, using imagination. I've got to learn that they don't need all that detail that we do. So I've got to learn to have a neurotypical person in the car behind the wheel, and I've got to think, right, these brains are going to use more imagination, so I don't need to put 100% detail on it. And I know it sounds crazy to me, but I can just say to them, you can stop over there on the left, and they're going to do it. They won't need to know exactly precisely where, precisely how, precise angles or precise timing reference points. They're going to just go over there and do it. It might seem crazy to me, but that's their brain. And I've got to learn to accept their brain. And one of these things that I'm learning to do more as a person is to accept other people's heads. And thinking, this is a different head. There is nothing wrong with it. It works in a different way. So therefore, when I deal with them, I've got to think on their level. And I think the most important thing is to change levels, like you're putting on different hats. And you're thinking of this neurotypical person, you're thinking, right, they have this type of brain. So therefore, to communicate my brain with this brain, I need to speak this language. It's like different people from different countries. You speak the language. So it's neurotypical languages, different language schools. So I've got to alter everything. I think the biggest lesson I've learned to do is to change the perception, to change the language, to change the way the lessons are run, to change using more or less imagination factors, to be able to be flexible. You got to learn to change. Almost as if you're becoming that hole for the people to fit into. Do you remember the square pegs and the round holes? How you can't fit the square peg? No. You don't change the peg to fit your hole. You change the hole to fit that peg. So if you've got that square peg behind the wheel, you make yourself the square hole so that they can fit in with you. You've got to be flexible. Does that make any sense? Because now I'm going over the top. This is what we do with the using neurotypical metaphors to make it work. But I think it works. I think that thing works. Everybody wants to change that peg to fit in that hole, don't they? You don't want to change that peg to fit in the hole. What if you change the hole?
And that, I believe, links back to the very start of this episode, finding out what kind of pupil we've got sat next to us. And that is then when we adapt our approach suitable for them.
Then we change to fit. Yes. So I think the biggest lesson I've ever learned is to change. You're changing to be flexible. Yeah.
I love it. Next question. What's your favourite film?
Wow, what a question. That's just blew me up because it's changed the subject to the autistic brain's not ready yet.
I told you they were random, Julia.
I know, but that's random plus. That's really taking me head out of my school to be able to say that. Oh, how many films are there that are good? Have you ever heard of one called Hell Drivers? Made in the 1960s. You've got Patrick McGowan, you've got Sid James, you've got such a load. You've got Sean Connery. Oh, and you've got a terrific cast of drivers driving ballast, and there's one guy who's a really big bully, and there's a big scam going on in the firm. It's terrific. I think it was made in the 1960s, Hell Drivers. And it's a real, very gritty film about what happens to these people. But it's amazing because you can see all the different characters here doing the same job, but they're having to get on with each other, trying to work as a team, and there's this big bully. And there's a big scam as well. Yeah, William Hartnell's in it. He plays a big boss. And you'd be amazed how all these different characters all fit in. It's well written. The script is brilliant. It's well acted out. And it is incredible. It really is an excellent film, Hell Drivers, because it really is hell for them. And the DVD I've got of the movie talks about real ballast drivers that really haul the ballast. And they say the atmosphere and the real job is very similar to that. It's very competitive. And the way the drivers have got to haul the ballast and they try to do the teamwork together, but there's this particular big bully, and he's bullying them. And they're having to all try and cope with him. And there's a new guy turning up for work and how they treat him. And I'm thinking, well, this is like being back at school and having to fit in and trying to belong with the guys. And it's very similar to how the autistic person's got to fit in with the world as well. You think, here's the newbie having to get on with this team of blokes. Very, very strong, very gritty stuff. But it's terrific, honestly. It teaches teaches your life. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the first random question. The next one, what was the last book you read?
Oh my God, you wanted to go training up to the bedroom now, hunting through all the stuff.
Make it up. No one knows.
Well, the book I'm actually doing now is Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews.
Okay. I have no idea what that is.
Well, Flowers in the Attic. They made a movie about it as well, so you can even Google the film. And it's about a family of four. But there's four kids, right? So there's the guy Chris who's about, I would say, about 14, 15 when it all starts. There's the girl Kathy telling the story, and then there's 4-year-old twins, and the dad dies in a car accident. And because of that, they depend on his money to run their fine house and everything. But they lose everything after the dad's death. And the only way they can survive is for the mom's mom to put them up in her house. Now, there's a granddad who's the mom's dad, who doesn't approve of the marriage and cut her out of the family's will and everything. So it's the mother's job now to get back in with the granddad and grandma, making a decent daughter out of her, so she will then be able to inherit the money and get the family out of this mess. But because of the bad marriage, the children are viewed as total trash. They've got to stay hidden in the airless attic of the house, as in the flowers in the attic. So they can't be seen and can't be heard. And they stay there week after week with just the one bedroom in this attic, month after month, and the year goes on, and you can see the change of seasons and what happens to the people and all the drama that happens, and how the mother's personality changes and to look towards the children alters, and their lives are altering, and the kids, how they grow up in that attic. And wow, what a world. And it really blows your head off. I mean, honestly, I'm serious. It's set in the 1950s, but the thing was actually written in the 70s. But they made a film about it as well, and that blows your mind off as well. Flowers in the Attic, how the family have to survive under those circumstances. It's very, very cool. Once again, it's hard, gritty stuff. Oh, and it turns your head inside out. You see what happens to the family. But, wow, that blows your head off. Yeah, it does. Yeah. I got a lot of second-hand books from the charity shop, and that was one that I picked up. And because I've already seen the film, and it's like everything else. The book's 1,000 times better than the film. They can't put it into the movie. They just can't do it.
Yeah.
The movie kind of just glosses over the surface, but to get the depth of the story, you've got to have a book. Yes, you have. If we're dyslexia, you've got to have a book. Yes, you do. Yeah.
That's great. And that is the last of the Tell Me questions, Julia. We have survived it. No more questions on that front. What I would like to do now is ask you where people can go if they would like any more information from you, and any numbers or contact information I can put in the description anyway, but feel free to talk about what you offer people.
Well, there's training one-to-one, which is over the internet, I can do now. There's one-to-one training, so it helps driving instructor with the pupils. You can learn about autism, all about it. ADHD, all about that. So you can do a general course on neurodiversity. So it's kind of flexible, hour on hour, week after week, etc. through the months. If you want to have pupils with having help when the course is running, then you can. You get advice on your pupils, anything like that. You come to me, no problem. In fact, the autumn intake's progress going to start in a couple of weeks. So I'll be learning all the way through the autumn and through the winter, everything like this. Anything on autism, ADHD, we'll be able to teach no problem at all, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia, etc. You just got to be able to see into their brains. There's also workshops that are run. I mean, this year I've been to Colchester, I've been to Wrexham. I'm not sure whether this tape's going to be up before the instructor show with them there on the 28th of September at Solihull. So sometimes we travel, doing different places to do full-day training, things like that. We do in-car training courses as well. There's a lot of different things we provide. There's the files, of course. I've written a lot of documents about autism, ADHD, etc. that will help instructors plan the lessons. There's a theory, big file that I've written for those who have trouble with the theory test, and it goes through all the questions with them, doing answers from the practice questions in context. There's no questions asked. It just describes all the practicality of it. I do the one very similar for the practical training as well. There's a lot of things I provide, really. There's a talking send, of course, which is the videotapes, which is on Patreon, that people can pay a subscription to watch. And there must be about 90 tapes in there. I'm talking about must be pushing 100. And there's live in-car work as well. I've been doing this presentations on it, talks, all sorts. Yes, that everybody can learn in there as well on the Patreon. So there's lots of things I'm still designing. The stuff that's not out yet. If anybody has ideas, I can even start a product off and say, oh, what about this? I say, right, okay, let's have a look, see what we can do. Like I say, if there's a problem, I'd like to find a solution for it. If the contact details, you got my email address, haven't you? That you can pull out on this tape, you can do that.
Yep.
There's the phone number as well, which I believe you've got.
Yep.
I'm not sure, 077-610-64694. There's the Facebook page, which is Excel with Dr. Julie Malkin, MBE, that's me. There's a friend on Facebook as well. There's WhatsApp. You can get the phone number through on the WhatsApp and send a text. You often do video training over the WhatsApp or the Messenger app. So you can send a message on Messenger to me because I'm on the Excel page. Excel with Dr. Julie Malkin, MBE on Facebook. So there's a lot of places you can find me. Yeah, of course you can. Everybody's free to contact me regardless of what it is. If there's theory test support that I do online one-to-one with the pupils, sometimes there's quite a lot of different things that I do. Do a lot of evening work. I've done meditation work for people even scared of driving tests or driving lessons even. And even getting them to sleep at night with meditation exercises, that kind of thing. I've done that for them. So you just got to be prepared. Like I say, flexibility is one of the biggest lessons you can learn with this. And if a pupil says that they're stressed out and they can't sleep and they're terrified the night before the lesson, what do you do? And well, I was online at 9 o'clock at night and this poor pupil's in the bed and I went to calm him down, get him to think nice thoughts about cars, etc., and relax the body, relax the brain, and send him off to sleep at 10 o'clock, and then it's perfectly okay for his driving lesson. So that's what you do. You've got to be flexible. You have to bend over your pupil. If they want the help, then they can get it. There's a lot I can do. There's a lot I can do.
Excellent. We will make sure that all of your contact information goes in the description. But for this evening, Julia, thank you very much for your time. As always, really appreciate it. And it was great fun having you on.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you, Josh. And it's great to be here. Thanks very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Julia for today's episode. You can find more information from Julia on the links that she mentioned that I'll leave down in the description. And if you would like more information on these topics, you could also sign up to Julia's membership, which is Talking Send with Dr. Julia Malkin, MBE, and that's available on Patreon. And thank you to our sponsors, Knowledgeability Instructor Training. You can find all of their award-winning content at www.adikit.co.uk. Thank you.